like a Youth for Christ conference back maybe 20 years ago.
That's good.
Long time ago.
I forget where you're at. Are you in California too?
Yeah, I'm Vancouver, Washington. It's like, think 2 miles north of Portland, Oregon.
Okay. Wow. All right. So, okay. Very pretty area. I've never been up there myself, but that's nice.
Yeah. Lots of fir trees.
Wait, it's got sunshine?
No.
You don't have sunshine.
Good point.
You don't have that. If the sun comes out, like, traffic is horrible because people don't know how to drive in the sun.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Is it brighter right now? Normally, I think it's darker in your office, though. I think he's.
Yeah. So we actually have some sun right now, and it's very unusual. And the weathermen are freaking out. They're saying there's going to be hail, there's going to be tornadoes. Like, they're all panicked, and it's just sun. It's like
they think it's end times or something.
Yeah, we don't know what to do with sun. Like literally, therapists are going home early because they're afraid of the weather, and it's just sun.
Just sun. They're like, Daddy, what's that?
Yeah. They literally have the broadcast, quote unquote, what is that bright thing in the sky? Is like a saying.
I actually I read one time that the skin cancer prevalence, I think it's actually higher in like the northern Midwestern states or something. And I didn't see how that could be possible until I went to Minnesota one time during the winter. And I noticed a lot of people seem to have like a reddish tan, and I think what I gathered from them was that the sun reflects up. But maybe that's not the true everywhere kind of thing.
No, we're just not used to sun. And like me, I was out on a boat for 2 hours and blam.
That's true.
Like
don't have the built up melanin or whatever.
No, we burn. We got a lot of Irish out here.
People not like you, Anthony. Anthony, what's going on in that chat room of yours? What's the name of it again?
Science and Technology. We can talk about. Well, the latest thing was, I just read a Scientific American article, and they found out that sleep reduces synchrony or coherence in the brain, and that seems to improve performance, and that they can replicate it with stimulation. But it just made me think of, I don't think anybody's sleeping. I don't believe anybody's sleeping. If somebody tells me they're sleeping, this happened with 2 female friends recently. I had them track their sleep. They were like, "Oh no, I'm sleeping. Turns out they're sleeping 6 hours, and the response, I guess I get up like a lot during the night, or what, you know what I mean? So, I don't know what's going on. I just had a woman who told me, I can't sleep because of all the beta and theta I have. This is just like on my personal wall or whatever. I was like, oh, have you tried to decrease that or remove? She goes, well, I do ILF. And I'm thinking, but is your sleep fixed? Because it doesn't sound like maybe it's time to try something. I don't know how to do it. But I'm just getting a little frustrated. Nobody seems to care about sleep.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen ILF do some pretty cool stuff with sleep, but
I'm sure
you have to do what works. And if your sleep isn't optimized, then try something else, or make some changes to the protocols you're using, because you should focus on sleep, and sleep should be sacred because we have a lot going against. I think we talked about this a few weeks ago, but microplastics, LEDs, we're all sleeping 2 hours worse than we did 30 years ago. If we do the best we can, we're only going to encroach on that level of what's stolen from us. And if you do everything right, which is like for me, that's a list of 15 things you should be doing, which is a lot, you're probably going to get like 80% of that, and not even 100% of it.
It takes a lot. I know you. I know you. You've dealt with central sleep apnea before. Hopefully, you were okay with me saying that. But I know people have.
They don't have it anymore.
And I have had as well. Go on. Oh, you're improved.
What's that?
Can I ask what seems to have helped you with that?
It's controversial, but I'll say it. I'm a little bit nervous explaining it because it's weird. But you're in
the right place.
Yeah.
I had a monitor that would alert me and wake me up if my oxygen level dipped, and I could modulate the alert. And so if I had it go off at like 89% oxygen, it would wake me up 15 times a night. And then eventually it stopped waking up less and less and less, and then none at all. And so I raised the difficulty eventually to 92 and then 96%. I don't know what kind of learning could have occurred there, but I don't have variability in my oxygen anymore. And all I did was essentially have something alert me a lot.
When you say, are you saying that you increase the amount of times it alerts you, or that you decreased the amount? I'm trying to figure out.
As it no longer needed to alert me, I increased the difficulty by raising the threshold for alert. So I said, like, I'm going to now not be 89% oxygen, but 92, 94.
Okay.
And so the alert would occur at higher rates of oxygen rather than lower.
That's pure biofeedback.
Yeah, I'm not formally recommending that. There's no research on that. It did work for me. Okay. And I still, to this day, wear the oxygen monitor every night. It just doesn't go off. So it doesn't wake me up.
I'm so happy. And we have a question, but I have a friend who I think may suffer from central sleep apnea. And I'm going to mention and have him watch this. Yeah. We have Talabo here with a question on apnea. Can neurofeedback fix sleeping with your mouth open, breathing through the mouth instead of your nose? What do we think?
Stop sleeping on your back.
Joy Lunt sure believes that it can, and she has some good rationalizations for why she thinks that it can. It does require you to move around the sensory motor strip very intentionally. And I'm not going to consider myself an expert in that. But if you wanted to consult with somebody on that, I think Joy Lunt is someone who has the most amount of experience in tedious work like that. Is there published literature on that? I don't think so.
That was very, that's interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that someone like Joy, even Joy, has figured that out, but maybe they have. Yeah. That's really good news.
Well, and if you look at all the things that are associated with open mouth breathing at night, those are all the things that neurofeedback has been shown to improve. And so, of course, there's got to be, once you see that correlation, you're like, oh, of course it's going to be able to help. But the question is, have we actually looked at this variable and done treatment and seen it improve? And we want to look at somebody with the most amount of clinical experience who's been doing this the longest, and that's Joy. So I asked her, and she said yes.
Interesting.
But isn't it as simple? Isn't it as simple as just not sleeping on your back?
It can be. Yeah.
Like putting a tennis ball in the back of your T-shirt, and
I don't know. Not for everybody. It wasn't for me.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Fair enough.
I have heard that too, that a lot of it can be. So for instance, I really only snore on my back, at least as far as I'm told. And my doctor recommended to me that I try to learn to sleep on my side. And I did, but it was tedious. The other thing I've heard, if Talabo wants to try this, it should be pretty safe. There was some evidence, and I think I've even seen it on a person's monitor, O2 monitor. Try some deep breathing before bed. And I think I got this from a few, but Andrew Huberman is one of the people that says deep breathing can work out your breathing muscles, which include your lungs, but also parts of your face and things, to keep those passages open. And a friend has done that and sort of demonstrated with an O2 monitor that it really does. The nights that she does the deep breathing, she does not dip like that anymore. So might be useful.
Yeah. There's, I don't know how well it's published, but I know that the Russians have done a lot of research on heart rate variability and global general functioning correlations. And it's quite stunning. And if we can increase the heart rate variability, we see a lot of sympathetic responses by a lot of other systems. And so it would make sense that if you are working out that kind of muscle, that heart rate variability before bed, that it could be enough to rein in some of those systems.
And this may apply for Talabo here, Josh. There's a question. It's a comment. Children with autism sleep with their mouth open. My daughter does. She's 6 with ASD. And so, I'm almost wondering, potentially, could something like HRV, which I'm assuming would be like a biofeedback HRV breathing style intervention, maybe that would help someone like her daughter. I don't know for sure. Perhaps you want to comment.
Yeah. The right way is the way that works. And you have a mix of, will your daughter tolerate these protocols, and does it work for your daughter? As is with research, especially in health, rather than mental health, rather than health, we have a degree of success that can be something like 30% to 80%, depending on what we're looking at, maybe 85%. You don't really see 90% on mental health stuff. So you're like, does this work for my kid, and will my kid do it? And so with HRV, you're looking at like a half a dozen systems. Some of them are pretty casual. Like if I reach in my desk over here, I can pull out 2 or 3 different HeartMath systems that are pretty easy to connect, pretty easy to look at, and do some exercises that are pretty simple. And if you can negotiate with your daughter to do that, and you can follow the right symptoms and track it, you want to give it enough time to make sure she gets good at the heart rate variability before you judge it. So it's not like, well, we did it 2 or 3 times and it didn't make an influence. It's like, okay, yeah, but she didn't really get good at it yet. So maybe practice it during the day and then do it right before bed when she's good at it.
I like that you mentioned something like the HeartMath, because my understanding was that it's pretty affordable. So that might be something to try that's affordable. I also wanted to mention, probably many people have thought of this, a reason that people sometimes sleep with their mouth open is they're congested. And so I know that that's happened to me. I have heard and experienced that nasal drops or saline drops can sometimes help with that. I don't know if that's this individual's problem, obviously, but I just want to make sure we're covering our bases.
I can't agree with you more, Anthony. I think you're absolutely spot on. I just kind of recommend, if you have a kid with severe ADHD or autism, that have them just be checked out by an ENT specialist too. Because if there's a mechanical issue, it's like, let's at least get that checked. Because if we can fix the breathing, if it's mechanical, it's like, okay, well, let's at least check that off. Let's clear the table of that. And then we're working with a little bit more of a level surface by which to help them. And when little kids breathe, they're 6. If you do like a functional MRI and you're looking at their brain is rocking in their skull as they breathe through the nose, like this much. It's a lot. Okay. And then when they are breathing through the mouth, nothing. And Anthony, this would be good for you. You're the guy who could track this down and find that GIF, of the brain rocking with the breath. Okay. Now, are you going to tell me that has no purpose? I don't buy it. You has to have some sort of stimulating purpose or detox purpose or something. It has to. It's too significant for it to be meaningless. He's already on it, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, the video editor of the show, and everybody should know that's what I am. Please check with your personal physician. But babies, in the cerebellum, when the moms rock them, right? There's some developing going on in there, and a lot of recent troubles ever since 2007, 2008, when the iPhone came out. You got less rocking and more staring, at the phone, and we could have a little disassociation in there. See, I'm throwing in all the multiple syllable words. Anthony, what did you find there?
Pete, you have a really interesting thought. We have this where people don't drink and smoke when they're pregnant. What if they shouldn't be using their phones when they're pregnant? And not for like the LED based or Wi-Fi based purposes, but just the movement based purposes.
Or political posts.
The cortisol levels. That's a good one.
We're still in that.
Yeah.
So well, I'm trying to draw a circle with arrows going around, and I'm trying to figure out where does the culprit start, because let's just say if you have apnea, you're not sleeping enough. That means, you're not as efficient during the day, issues, irritability, and, where does it?
Well, sleep apnea quadrupled since the release of the iPhone, and we don't know why. Quadrupled.
Really? That's an Anthony Ramos stat.
I'm going to be looking for that, and I do think it has gone up, particularly in kids. But I found out just this week, actually, the past week, something that also went up since the phones have been out. So youth obesity rates significantly increased since 2010. And guess what is highly associated with sleep apnea? In fact, most people with sleep apnea are overweight or obese, unfortunately. And so you may really be onto something there, that it's all connected. And if one thing's out of whack, maybe now you're not breathing so good, and now your brain is not, the synchrony is not going down at night, and everything's out of whack. So but I'll be looking for some of this stuff. This is interesting.
Well, Joshua, you know more than anybody. If somebody doesn't have a good night's sleep and they come in and they want you to train them, what are the percentages of efficiency there that go down, right?
So there are certain neuromarkers that I get all the time that are oftentimes, far too often, from people who are already coming from another clinic, that I won't train them. I simply see it and I go, you know what? We either need to have you go see a somnologist, a sleep doctor, or, we ought to do a lot of sleep hygiene first, because I'm not doing neurofeedback on you. It's one of those two. You either have a sleep disorder or we need to do sleep hygiene coaching first. And they'll ask me like, well, I already went and did 20 sessions at this other neurofeedback clinic, and here's my brain map stuff. Does it show the same thing, a year ago? I'm like, yeah, you still had those sleep problems. And they ask me like, well, why did I do the neurofeedback back then? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't try to throw other people under the bus, but I do worry about, we should be trying to make sure that our patients don't have medical problems with their sleep first. If there's a medical neuromarker, we should send them to something medical. And that does happen more often than I'd like it to be. Probably one a month, but I do 20 maps a month or something. But 1 in 20 is not nothing. And then something like 15 out of 20 have vigilance problems at least, but 1 in 20 have a diagnosable disorder. It's like, this is not my scope of practice. We need to send you to a medical provider who specializes in this. And do I want to do neurofeedback on somebody with untreated sleep apnea? No, I don't. I want them to get the sleep apnea addressed first. I don't want to do neurofeedback on that person. It's not impossible that neurofeedback, couldn't help them. It's just not likely. They're likely to be your non-learner, and I know that because I get them from other clinics all the time, and they're the non-learners.
You don't call them unlearners, do you?
Non-learners. It's a technical term, I think, in the literature. So I don't know. Yeah.
Well, Anthony's looking for the latest meme. 23andMe going under. Who's going to get all my spit?
Yeah.
The Russians. No.
Not a bad choice there. Yeah. Wasn't there a whole controversy about why they couldn't get that company working? Everybody in the world knew who they were and has used them. I feel like everybody has a family or friend, and they couldn't make it. Oh, I think the big thing was they promised that there would be like new drugs coming out of this company because they were going to use the data for drug development, and they never could for some reason. I don't recall why.
Well, who would pick it up? It was it Sergey's ex-wife? One of the two ex-wife had that. So if it goes down, somebody can buy that data on the cheap. Yeah. My goodness. I mean, what can you...
Well, we're a couple years away from AI software being able to do crazy stuff with it. Like they went out of business a couple years too early.
Who would make sense to pick that up? You think of Microsoft or...
Well...
Apple and health. Apple and health.
You'd think it would be valuable, but I think that was part of the controversy is they're finding out that genetics and disease are not necessarily as associated as you think. So if you know someone's genetics, the environment is so important that you don't necessarily know outside of something that is a very pronounced extreme. And there's stats. I think it's like, I don't know. I've seen stats that say something like 6% of disease is caused by genetics. Well, that leaves the other 94%. It wasn't your genetics. It was something else. And they don't always know, but it may not have been the genes.
What's the saying about a gun and a bullet? DNA is the gun and your environment's the bullet, whatever it is.
Ooh, I like that.
Isn't that the concept behind like a phenotype?
That's just a video editor, you know. See what happens when they don't ask questions and I have to come up with this stuff. So the question still stands. So you think Apple would get this to start working in with their watch and all their other stuff?
Well, I think that it probably depends on the quality of the data. I had read an article a couple years back that the 23andMe took some corners cut, that they were getting high quality sections of the DNA test, but it wasn't thorough. And if that's true, you have some hard barriers to how desirable that particular data set is. And I don't know if that article was incorrect or if that's actually the concern.
Well, insert name of company here, not 23andMe, but to get your genes looked at, do you think it's worthwhile instead of filling out a clipboard of a family history to get that done, or it's just not ready for prime time, is your opinion?
I think it's a neat idea. It's probably good at a bunch of things, but with AI software, because it's the chicken pecking that we can do at our level versus what the computers are going to be able to do with quantum computers and AI software in the next 10 years. Much more interesting, much more accurate, much more powerful correlations.
You see what Mark Jones has got going on in Texas? He's 3D printing his caps.
Yeah. That's pretty cool stuff.
Can we make an app with our Raspberry Pi, Joshua?
I'm sure we can, but I'm sure it's been done. I don't really love the idea of getting in the hardware business. I mean, Jay Gunkelman could tell you that, if you want to go broke, go into hardware development. That's a tough one, man. I don't know. I think I'll listen to his wisdom.
I'm with you, but I'm looking what those kids are doing, and a good 3D printer is about $500-600.
Yep.
So it's like you're putting a Lego together, and if you can build, I don't know, they got a 16 gig Raspberry Pi.
Yep.
That's as good as any laptop, and then running whatever on it. So this is probably, I don't know, all in $200, and then you 3D print the cap, and I guess you got to buy the sensors and all that.
Sure.
Andrew Hill came on here and he answered something for me I think has always bugged me. His theory, or one of the theories, is that because it's hard to patent neurofeedback is why it doesn't take off. You don't get the millions of dollars where you can patent a drug. So I think that you're asking a good question of like, why don't we just use a Raspberry Pi and this other thing or whatever? And it's like somebody has to invest, and it's hard to invest when it's like if you're putting up on Amazon something that is not hard to duplicate, there's going to be 3 million people behind you if it does work or get discovered. You know what I mean? And I just heard something that validated that again, which is these you've probably heard of UVC lights. Apparently UVC lights, they became articles around COVID time came out, and apparently they're pretty good at killing germs or something like that. But they said that because you can't patent it, apparently that is part of why not a lot of money gets spent in promoting that industry. And I was like, this is neurofeedback. It feels like,
well, and sometimes those things land in like third world countries more. When I was doing some work in Haiti after the earthquake, I actually stumbled into a hospital which was being developed, and I was like, it was the middle of nowhere, and they were using UV lights to sanitize and circulate the air, and they had it in every entryway. There was these UV lights pointed up, and essentially like a fan that was just recirculating there. It was something like every 30-40 seconds, all the air was sanitized, and it was like, this is pretty smart. Like, this is pretty good. We don't do anything this cool in the United States. It was a cheaper, cooler way of doing it,
Just don't breathe in that ozone. But I mean, that cleans up an office pretty quick. God, you couldn't buy a mask back then, and you couldn't buy a little cabinet to disinfect your caps. It was all sold out.
Yeah.
Talabo, don't be shy. I'm waiting for you. Let's go. Or Pete's going to have to ask another question. Anything happening with the vets? I know we got our secretary person setting out group chats.
Anything happening with the vets?
Yeah. It just came up to mind because our secretary guy stepped in it. It included a reporter on a group chat.
Oh,
so
yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
I'm talking smack.
Yeah, they're going to investigate him for it, I think, too, which will be interesting. I don't know what you can do about that, though. But I mean, they're mostly cutting out administrators. And to recap, the last time they did this, 8 years ago, not 8 years ago.
What did they do? What did they do? I don't remember.
They basically cut, a huge amount of administrators. They fired 5,000 people, and they pared down the amount of administrative staff that was allowed, and the amount of services that were rendered went from, I think it was 2 million backlog cases to being totally caught up. So meaning that despite the fact that they reduced the administrative force dramatically, I can't remember what percentage it was, but it was a huge reduction in the administrative force, they were able to not just stay on top of it, but actually catch up. And so the idea that more administrators solves the problem is not necessarily true. And I'm just a big fan of whatever it takes to work. As a veteran who has found the VA in my local area completely and utterly useless, I can't use it at all. I'm for any kind of reform, and I'm open to any kind of reform, because the current model is, if you're not willing to become homeless, we won't serve you. And it doesn't matter if you're injured. It doesn't matter if you have a line of duty injury. It doesn't matter your history, nothing. So
yeah, my buddies that served, they and again, Joshua, thank you for your service and all the stuff that you went through. He's in Chicago, but he's got to drive down to St. Louis to get an appointment because he can't get one up here. It's so is that the biggest problem, is getting in there?
So a lot of times when you actually go into the VA, you can have a line of duty injury that's well documented, and you could be having disability or not. I didn't have any disability because of some drama. Basically, I called an inspector general one too many times. So I didn't want the drama of having to fight them on that. So I just got out. Honorable discharge, no issues. But I don't have any disability for my injuries. When I went into the VA to get the physical occupational therapy, they basically said, we need you to be here at 7 a.m. and we need you to wait essentially all day for the possibility of getting occupational therapy. And you need to do that every day. So I just need to be hanging out at the VA at the possibility of receiving occupational therapy for a 40-minute appointment. And I needed to do that most days of the week. And so the criteria was that I must be homeless. I can't have a job in order to get the benefits from the injury, which I was actively disabled from. I had torticollis, which I looked like Quasimodo. I had to be unwilling to work. I had to be unwilling to work, and I wasn't unwilling to work. I insisted on having a job. So eventually neurofeedback ended up being the solution for the torticollis, which I put in my book. So
your book.
Yeah.
Where's the book, Joshua?
Well, I'm going to republish it probably next week, but it's called Neurofeedback for All. I'm putting the second edition out probably by Monday. Yep. It's a fun little summary, just lots of pretty pictures and illustrations. It's like 100 pages.
You'll give me the information. We got to get you some money. Guys, it's
like high gloss print. I make like 20 cents. So it's not really like about money. It's just a resource for the community.
It's a business card. So, Guy Solel, will neurofeedback affect smell? He says his wife can't and never could smell.
Yeah. Did that change? Is that why you're asking? Because alpha-based protocols, in my experience, have been known to give people their sense of smell back. And I have my own theory as to why. And some people who've never smelled before can start to smell, and they're really disoriented by that first.
I mean, is that like a COVID reaction? Can you reverse, or smelling comes back after COVID? It's not the same thing. Like, what's going on?
I'm not entirely sure. I think that we don't understand smell very well. We believe that there's like an olfactory system, like really deep in the front of the brain. But at the same time, there's such a large interaction between different parts in the rest of the brain that there's something else potentially going on. Where
Guy said his wife could never smell.
So the sense of smell goes through the limbic system before it gets integrated into the rest of the cortex, which is completely backwards compared to other senses, by the way. And so the sense of smell is just very, very different in that it's integrated differently. And so my experience is that when people are doing alpha-based training, like alpha down training or alpha theta, they can sometimes have a change or an enhancement of their sense of smell. And I think it has to do with the fact that alpha training affects such large amounts of neurons and can reorient such large mechanisms in the brain that sometimes we'll see, or it actually has a huge effect on the limbic system, which is where the smell is actually like routes through, if I understand that correctly. So it's literally kind of backwards from the way we process other sensations. And so I don't claim to understand that, but it does seem to be correlated with alpha training,
All right. Talabo, what about accelerated neurofeedback treatment program, which runs for 8 weeks at 5 sessions per week, compared to the regular treatment spread over 6 months in terms of effectiveness and benefits?
The devil's in the details. So like Joe Kamiya, 1950s neurofeedback research, even some 1940s literature. Joe Kamiya did a lot of his work 30 sessions in 30 days. And when he was asked why, he said, and many people thought it was a joke, "It came to me in a dream." And that was not a joke. He was being serious. He literally had a dream that he should do 30 sessions in 30 days. And so that's actually where the precedent for doing alpha theta training in 30 sessions in 30 days came from, a dream. And it is pretty effective to his credit. But that isn't how we do most protocols. But alpha-based protocols seem to be pretty tolerant of daily training. So it really depends on what you're training. And I wouldn't do like SMR-based protocols. I wouldn't do infralow and for slow-based protocols daily. I do it 2 or 3 times a week at the most. But there are exceptions. So.
Well, he says he has time this summer, and he's thinking about doing it for his daughter. So
yeah, sometimes when you have only a short window and you want to do an intensive, that's another reason why you would do that. Is I need to try and get as much done in a shorter period of time, and there isn't a lot of useful commentary around that, and there isn't a lot of useful research that helps us orient on, if I do something like an SMR-based protocol or a low beta-based protocol, and I do it like 5 days a week all summer, is that going to be less effective than the same amount of sessions spread out every other day? And some people say that it might be slightly less effective than giving your brain a little bit more time to integrate the information, but doing it every day is more effective than having less sessions. So you kind of have to triage your resources, and time is a resource. So
your uncle bought your book.
Yeah. Hey, James, thank you. I hope you find it useful. I really do.
Let's see. What do you say? There's some interesting research recently in olfaction and personality.
I don't doubt it. I'd love to look more into that. I know that there's a lot going on with the olfactory system, and that I'm sure we don't understand that very well.
So I will tell you, there was some research even coming out of UF here in my town. But basically, if a senior, an older adult, cannot smell peanut butter, it's highly correlated with the earliest stages of dementia. And they think that, so the reason, well, smell is correlated with neurodegeneration. Not in all cases, obviously. And I looked up anosmia is what it's called, lack of smell, for that gentleman who said his wife has never smelled. One of the top things, like the number 1 or 2, was injury. So I'm almost wondering, just like head injuries affect the EEG and concussion, we deal with it all the time and stuff. Who knows? Perhaps she hurt her head at one point as a kid, So there probably are a lot of reasons. But I do know if somebody's sense of smell, or it sounds like if somebody's sense of smell comes back after doing neurofeedback, I'm going to guess that that's probably a positive sign overall, for their health. So,
well, what's the warning sign when you're having a stroke? You smell what?
You smell toasts. Yeah.
Toast.
Burning hair.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
Where's Jay at when you need somebody to pontificate on something you don't know anything about?
Jay would have a lot of thoughts on that, I bet.
That would be a cool one.
How do you know if you're overtraining, PNQ? Welcome back, PNQ. How do you know if you are overtraining? What are the symptoms of overtraining? Why does it happen? Oh, my head hurts.
Yeah. So overtraining is, there might be more than one definition, but I'm going to go with the sketchiest version of the definition, perhaps. That there is a version of overtraining where you can just excite the neurons too much, and the vascular system is not capable of providing the amount of oxygen that is being used by the network that is activated by the training. And that typically happens not in every case. So not every case can be overtrained. But you can overtrain the elderly, and you can overtrain even young people if they have vascular ischemia. And you can generally tell if you're skilled from neuromarkers. There are research-based neuromarkers of vascular ischemia. So you can know when you should be cautious. And those symptoms generally are going to be inconsistent treatment response and pretty wild, funny symptoms like anxiety, insomnia, and even inconsistent, like maybe their treatment could make them euphoric, but then the next session it causes them anxiety. And when you see funny stuff like that, you're like, dude, we need to slow down.
Infraslow, does it work for anxiety?
Now I'm tempted, I'm tempted to give a longer answer to this one, just to be a little facetious. What is anxiety?
Yeah,
anyway,
I don't know.
Anthony, what do you think anxiety is?
Future-oriented thinking, perhaps, or?
And that's not a bad answer. But there's a piece of literature that I think is actually a fantastic read. It's a book, How We Make Emotions by Lisa Barrett, and she's an emotion researcher. And she goes over how we know that our emotions are constructs that are somatic-based sensations that we interpret from historical association. And those are our constructs, just our individual constructs, that then we project onto a word that we think we share experiences on when we do not. And so when the problem with this is that when we say anxiety, and yes, there is probably some fair correlation with this is energy for doing something that we don't know what to do. So there's something probably somewhat true archetypally in that. But the reality is that anxiety is not one thing. And so when we go, does this protocol work for anxiety? And I won't get specific. Let's just say that there's like research boards where they're like, we need to find an anxiety protocol. I'm like, just, oh gosh, wasting our time. Like, cause seriously, like, cause we're going to have a large degree of failure. The best we could have is partial success, because what is anxiety? And if you just grab a bunch of people with anxiety, they're not having the same experience and they're not having the same cause. And that's just what it is. And so when we say, does this protocol work for this experience, we aren't really pointing to one experience when we group them together. We think we are, but that's projection. So that's why we do things like QEEGs. So, because we want to figure out what's the mechanism behind this anxiety, and does this protocol help that? And the answer I would say is it might. And I find infraslow very useful. Sorry,
that.
Long answer.
No, I thought it was going to be longer. I was going to put my feet up. Now I'm back.
But yeah, if people love, very technical reads, Lisa Barrett's work, How We Make Emotions, fantastic read that will break your brain on how emotions are just not real. We kind of made them up.
Yeah, I worry a little bit when I hear stuff like that, in the sense that maybe they're not real, but I do think they're probably associated with neural activity or physiological patterns. And I think part of what we're doing is addressing the physiology. So I guess I don't know how far she takes the argument by any means.
So when she does say that there's some, obviously it's a distressing belief to a historical somatic sensation. You're interpreting this as distressing because of the historical understanding of that sensation.
Yeah.
So the historical context in which you've felt that physical sensation.
Yeah, and go on. Yeah.
Again, we have a lot of projections that we put onto a word, and projections on when we use that word relative to other people. And there's an illusion that it's shared. She found that there's really no correlation within or outside of cultures except for happiness. The happiness did have some correlation, but only some. And there was no correlation with negative emotions, none.
Correlation with what? What was the correlation with?
So the correlation in them actually having the same sensation and experience. With negative emotions there was no correlation.
Like
they
the same bodily sensation. I just don't want to minimize. Like, do you have people like Mel Robbins who tell people, if somebody's upset with you, just say to you, if you're anxious, just say to yourself, let them. And it's like, no, I'm sorry. The stuff that people in neurofeedback do that we do, to me, it is faster transformation and better transformation than anything I've seen come out of a counselor's office. In tandem, probably work better. I don't mean to say it has no value, but that's what I want to avoid is the people. Well, these are
I wholeheartedly agree. I do. And when I do brain maps on people, and they have anxiety, I see people who have slow alpha, and I'm like, okay, they're having this kind of like distressing background rhythm that they can't speed up, and that can be anxiety provoking for them. Their brain is having a hard time processing information. And I see people with very, very, very fast alpha, and that can create a white knuckling kind of anxiety. And they kind of described it the same way, but those are opposite mechanisms. One's too fast, one's too slow.
Absolutely.
Or you'll see somebody with beta, too high beta, fast beta. That's a totally different fast mechanism. Or you'll see people who have anxiety and it looks more like they're having migraines. It looks like they're sharp, slow transients. And so you're like, well, are they having the same sensation? And the answer is not really. They are having something that they relate poorly to, that they don't, that is energetic, that they don't know what to do with. So there's some basic structure to it, but it isn't the same thing, nor is it the same steam engine,
I value that.
And we should fix it.
Yeah. All right, we have a question. Who'd like to read there?
Castle Music, welcome to the show. Anthony, go ahead. You can read it because the PNQ's got a follow-up.
All right. Will SMR training work with a child with alpha and mu, or I guess they just mean mu? I'm not sure.
And then PNQ, what about adults with mu?
There you go. Tag on if Josh or anyone wants to.
I just try to make sure that I'm not training the mu when I'm trying to train the sensory motor rhythm. So that as fast as the mu gets, make sure that your training band is outside of that mu, which some clinics aren't doing. So it's like, okay, we've got mu, and that mu can be 12, 13 hertz sometimes. Okay, well, you don't really want to have like a 12 to 15 hertz SMR band if your mu is pushing into 13 hertz. Because that's going to catch your feedback way more than the SMR. So there's some skill in kind of negotiating with their individual QEEG. And that's like half the reason why you do a QEEG.
That sounds important.
So yes, you can.
Oh. Yeah. So go on, Pete. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so kids and adults, difference.
Well, and if you're trying to attenuate the mu, you're not going to do that with the sensory motor rhythm. Generally, you're gonna actually go train the frontal lobe. If the goal is to attenuate the mu, but that's I don't know if that was the question.
Yeah. And I think to harmonize like the last question, it sounds like it's important to target the training at the person. So like there is no one anxiety pattern. There's no one autism pattern. We know this, but just to reiterate it. And there's no one size fits all, even in neurofeedback, or there usually isn't. So,
yeah.
Hey, I'm sorry, Anthony, your buddy's got a question.
What's this about? What are some different ways inattentiveness could show up on a cue, EEG?
A lot. Every way, a dozen ways. Yeah.
I'm thinking of Jay's ADHD phenotypes, Addie, and those are, just to recollect them, it's like alpha, beta, or theta towards the frontal lobe. There's fast alpha, I believe, is one. There's one, I'm thinking of the drugs, but he uses SNRIs for there's slowed alpha is another one, I believe. And then beta spindles and paroxysms, which are just, I guess, like energy spikes in the EEG, essentially. And it's considered by some to be subconvulsive. So I guess the real answer is it depends which one that the inattentive person has. So yeah.
Quite a few options.
I think even Mew may, because I think there was a speaker at Sassoon and she had that there's like maybe like 7, I might be making this up, but I think she had like 7 ADHD phenotypes. And I think she might have even listed an additional 1 or 2, and one of them might have been Mew rhythm could result in inattentiveness, Addie. But yeah.
So why don't we want to train Mew? It seems like peak performers have it. Do you think Michael Jordan was the master of Mew?
Yeah.
And look at his personal life.
Yeah, so Michael Jordan was supposedly rumored to also produce kind of like a meditative like style of alpha when shooting 3-point shots. And most people are most athletes are producing mid beta, which is a very like peak performance. But if you are like Michael Jordan, you're probably meditating. And so you have the meditation level, which is way past like high performance. And then you have to do like, 20,000 hours of something to be meditative at it. It's crazy.
I wonder could that be because he's calmer than them? Because if you saw that Ben Affleck and Matt Damon movie about the Nike shoe, the first Air Jordan shoe, and the guy, Matt Damon, he worked for Nike, the character worked for Nike, and Jordan he was about to be a rookie when they made this shoe. I think it was his first year. And what he said is, I knew that Jordan was the guy we had to go with for our shoe because I watched him during the NCAA championship, and he was being called on to do a free throw that would decide the game. And the guy was completely calm, and he just plays this clip, and that's how it clicked in his brain. So I wonder if that, because we think of those, you mentioned that the other athletes, Josh, have beta. I'm wondering, I don't know, is it that they're more tense than he is, and that's why he can be meditating?
Yeah. I mean, you don't get me wrong. Mid beta is incredibly productive, and if you don't have mid beta, you're not going to be a high performance athlete. But once you get like mid beta, it's mid beta. It's very activating, very engaging, very like go. You're not going to do well if you don't have it. But then there's a line where you finally cross where the Michael Jordan is alpha. It's meditative. And that's the rumor supposedly. I don't know if that's published data or not. I did want to answer P&Q's last question though. You don't train Mew. We don't train Mew directly. The studies on that have shown that either doesn't work or it produces side effects. We train the frontal lobe to attenuate Mew. You can also get them out and get them socializing more unless they're autistic. Generally, increased socialization will produce eventually an attenuation of Mew. But training the frontal lobe will also attenuate the Mew. And it's maybe because it gets them out and gets them social. I don't know. And I think you're alluding to like the Santiago Brand lecture of like, we see Mew in high performance athletes. And the mechanism behind that is actually really interesting. When you see like a fast sprinter runner and they say, when I get on the track, it's just me and the track, and they don't hear the stands. That's because there's a social dissociation. That's your Mew, that's social dissociation. Santiago calls it positive dissociation because they're using that to get their practice time during performance. And if you don't have positive dissociation Mew, you will be unable to get your practice time during performance, and you won't get the gold medal.
Wait, say that again. The Mew reduces their practice time? I missed part of that. I'm
sorry.
No,
the Mew causes them to socially dissociate. Okay. And because they can socially dissociate, there's no difference between their practice time and their performance time. So they're able to perform as well in their performance as they are in their practice.
That makes so much sense. Yeah.
People can win gold medal type runs when they're not performing. And then they get in front of a judge and they get in front of stands and they get in front of cameras and they don't do as well. But when they produce Mew, they do.
What's that thing when you want to show your mom a trick on a skateboard, and as soon as she's there, you can't do it? When you're,
Exactly. So now Santiago Brand is the guy who gives lectures on that. So I want to give him credit where credit is due, though. Okay.
I do want to say though, the dissociation is a perfect jumping point for me, which is that, in a sense, what you're doing is they're not letting those people affect them. And you might almost say that they're not empathizing with those people. And I think that's important because, so Jay has said, and I'm just going to say what he says as best as I can. It's something like 70% of the autistic population has mu, and that the frontal lobe is a major center of mirror neurons. And so if mu is present, those mirror neurons are inactive. And so it does make sense, at least to me, that would be associated with reduced empathy. I also asked Jay, what is the remaining amount of people that has mu? And these, he said, mood disorders and ADHD. And so this mu rhythm, yes, it might be very helpful.
30% of all mood disorders, by the way.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
30% of all mood disorders have mu.
Wow. So it's present in, okay, thank you. I'm gonna write that. My point is just this mu, yes, it might be very, let's say Michael Jordan, it might be very productive for Michael Jordan. It may not be productive for some of the rest of us to disconnect our frontal lobe and our empathy center and our attentional executive function center. And by the way, the real function of those motor neurons is to emulate somebody such that you can reproduce what their mental state and their feelings were. And mu desynchronizes that or disconnects those neurons. I don't know that it's good for us to be desynchronizing these neurons as a layman, as a non-professional.
Yeah, I think you really have to know a lot to work with high-level CEOs and to work with performance athletes, because you want to know what you're supposed to be doing and not supposed to be doing, and you want to get proper informed consent because you don't want to take away something that they use, but you also want to give them the choice, because they might want, like I've worked with Olympic athletes who I looked at this and said, you're asking me to fix this thing in your nervous system, but if I take that away, you're going to lose your drive. And they said, do it. And they dropped out. I worked with, I can't be specific. Let's just say I worked with people who people would know. And I said, if I fix this thing that you're asking me to fix, you're not going to want to stay in your career and you're going to want to retire. And they said, do it. And they did. They retired. And these are people that everybody knows. And they retired because I tweaked something in their nervous system that took away an unhealthy, imbalanced drive that they are known for. But they didn't want it anymore because it was costing them too much. They wanted to be with their family. They wanted to fix their family life. And so it was no longer serving them.
Sorry. But yeah, athletes are known for bad home lives. And if you watch that documentary on Jordan, one of the things you get, I mean, this guy was kind of rude even to his teammates, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And not balanced.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you want to get proper informed consent. So it's not like I want to make you the most balanced person. You're not going to have any athletes or high-level CEOs if you do that. And you're going to take away everyone's special skills if you do that. You need to know exactly what you're doing and what they are using, and then you have to get informed consent. And I am shocked at how often someone will say, yes, do it anyways. Like people do generally want to be balanced, but you do need to get proper informed consent.
I like that.
I know the answer to this one. It depends. Does gamma neurofeedback work?
He's not wrong. Yeah. I've done it with success. I don't know how easy, or I don't know how often it is to succeed. It can be quite hard to train gamma. It's very hard to train something you can't see, and you can't see it in every client. You can't see it in most clients.
Jay will say on Facebook, by the way, I do want to mention that gamma is seen in seizure foci, and it's seen in thalamocortical dysrhythmia, I believe. And so I don't think he doesn't come right out and say, I think he may have, because I think a person was marketing gamma training in the neurofeedback exchange. I think he might have even said, if you could do this, you may not want to. Like, it may not be the best idea, because high frequency activity, by the way, it precedes seizures. And so anyway, I would proceed with caution is all I would say, if such a thing were possible.
What I like about this Q&A is we do the Thursday show with with Jay and Dr. Marie and you guys, of course, if you're whatever. What should be the headline, or what's the thumbnail sketch going to be for the show tomorrow? Are we talking about Moo? What's Mew?
Oh.
What should it be, John? What should we ask Jay? What are the unanswered questions that we have here to say? Jay, could you?
Dude, you know what? I should probably take advantage and jump on that and just ask Jay all the questions for my own blind spots. And be selfish. I should do that. I should, because I'm building this phenotype class, and I actually picked the perfect software to host it. I'm so excited. But there's like 2 or 3 areas that I want clarification. I could totally selfishly use that for my own benefit.
Absolutely.
I'd be like, Jay, help me out with temporal lobe alpha.
Hey, Josh, and I want to mention, I don't know when precisely you did the thing that helped you with the O2 monitor, but I do want to say, I feel like I've noticed like an extra energy from you, and like a more, you seem excited about this course, the phenotype course. So I think that's, I almost wanted to tell you last time, before I knew even that you had done something, I almost wanted to say, how you seem to be doing really well. So that's good news.
I think so. I mean, I had some big health issues. I got one of those toxic CPAP machines, and probably even since you initially knew me. And I had to get off of it and then get on a healthy CPAP machine that wasn't toxic and poisonous. And then I eventually found a solution that kept my oxygen levels up without a CPAP machine, which I'm extremely excited about. And even with the CPAP machine working and being compliant, it wasn't keeping my oxygen levels up as much as I'm able to keep it up now. So I'm more successful without the machine than with the machine. So I do think that is going to correlate with increased energy. But I'm also having to take some low-dose anticonvulsants because of the poisoning, and to give my nervous system kind of a rest from the toxic exposure. And no fun at all, but I've acclimated to those meds. And so you probably watched me be really suppressed from the initial dose. And over the last few years, I've built a tolerance to those meds, and I'm like I'm good.
I think it's the sunshine behind you, Joshua.
There you go. It's a new day in Washington.
Nice
I think that's great. I really hope I'm going to have a friend listen to this episode, and it sounds like maybe Labo wants to hear more about the breathing and sleeping stuff. But that could be cool tomorrow as well to hear about.
Jay Gunkelman tomorrow. Jay Gunkelman used to own a sleep lab, so he knows a lot about this stuff.
Yeah, Josh, we're going to need you to show up and go through this laundry list here. So Jay's going to have to take
I tell you what, I know that tomorrow I'm booked because I was out sick with pneumonia, but I will look into rearranging my schedule. I like spending time with you guys.
All right, perfect.
Yeah, that was good.
All right, Talabo, PNQ, Anthony and Joshua, of course, Addie, Guy, Castle Music.
James Moore,
the relative. Love it. Thank you for showing up for the Neurofeedback Q&A. Hopefully we got more A's and Q's going here, and the stuff that we didn't know we're going to talk about in tomorrow's show. Joshua, if people are in Washington, where are we going to send them if they want to get a little, or Oregon?
Yeah. In my area, we're alternative behavioral therapy. We're just 2 miles north of Portland. There's a couple people that's sort of in 100 miles or so, like Nathan Hollenbeck is pretty shy, but he's talented. He's down in Salem. Up north, we've got Richard Adler. He's the PTSD Institute. Richard Adler's also a forensic specialist if you ever need that kind of work. But that's kind of our northwest side. That's who I think is really talented. We're happy to help or consult if people need it.
Are you doing any of the remote stuff yet?
I'm thinking pretty heavily about it. I have a company that I built a couple of years ago that's allowed to do remote stuff. Haven't opened it up. I do have like remote systems. It's like I haven't pulled the trigger on it, but I have it. Like it's all built out and ready to go, and I just haven't done it. So
we've got this big audience here for you, Joshua.
That's fair. It's part of like quality control. Like I want to do the best work that I can with as many as possible, and remote systems have gotten so much better, but there's still like a 10 to 20% compromise when you do remote. And it's like, ooh. Now, here's the thing. That 10 to 20% compromise is totally acceptable if whatever they're going to get is worse than that. And so, but you really want to make sure that that option is the best option for them. And I don't want to, like I wouldn't want to offer a remote system to somebody if there was a talented provider that I admired within drivable distance to them. And see the problem? So
yeah. Anthony, on Facebook, people want to chat about technology. Where do we send them?
Yeah, you can try science and technology discoveries. And I wanted to mention something from Josh's comment. I think this idea of doing micro experiments, kind of like he did with his O2 monitor, might have had a big impact. I've been doing that with social media. I'm trying to share, play around with, is it an image? Is it an article and stuff? And I just read an article today. So these micro experiments, I think it does help. And then I'll just plug two people offices in Florida that I like. I love the Center for Biofeedback in Orlando, which is a friend named Alex Sanchez. He's very excellent. And then Center for Brain Training down in Jupiter, Florida, that I know Jay works with at times. And I think he consults kind of with both.
Who runs that one?
Oh gosh, it's been I went to him like a few years ago, but it's been so long. I'm so sorry. You just pull up the website. He's great. I'll do it. But yeah.
Too bad it's live TV. I'd edit it in.
I just want to know.
Yeah, I'll get you there. It's Michael Cohen.
I recognize him.
Michael Cohen, yeah. So he's
Cohen. Of course it's Cohen. Of course it's Cohen.
Sorry, Mike.
Great.
I'm sorry,
you can
Mike.
See his
a little bit if you're listening. Sorry. Go on.
You can see his interview on our podcast, and which reminds me, please everybody, like, subscribe. Every little bit helps that algorithm, push this peanut up the hill a little bit farther. Everybody have a great evening. Thank you for showing up.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
I do.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye, guys.